Calls are growing.
There are growing calls.
Well, there are growing concerns.
There are growing calls tonight.
Calls are growing.
The calls for President Trump's removal are growing.
The calls are growing louder in this city.
There are growing concerns.
There are growing calls.
There are growing calls.
There is a growing call with growing calls. There are growing calls.
There are growing calls tonight.
Calls for Doug Ford to resign grow.
Growing calls.
With calls for boycotts growing louder.
There are growing calls.
Facing growing calls.
Facing growing calls.
Well, there are growing calls.
Growing calls.
Calls are growing louder.
Calls are growing.
There are once again growing calls.
So there are growing calls.
There are growing calls tonight.
Calls are growing.
There is a growing call.
Calls are growing.
Growing calls.
Calls are growing.
Amid growing calls.
Calls are now intensifying.
I'm the motherfucking one who calls the shots. Now get the fuck out of here.
A vaccine with no needle.
Lots of people are afraid of needles, and some people don't get their vaccinations because they're so afraid of needles.
It'll be a game changer during a pandemic response. And this is how it works. That will be the vaccine, which is then printed onto those patches, put inside this applicator, put on the skin for 10 seconds.
Health experts are seeing a drop in the number of people getting the flu vaccine this year. They're urging everyone over the age of 6 months old to get a jab, especially young children.
It's not too late to have a flu vaccine. In fact, it's very important for your younger child and indeed everyone in the family.
We tried to poison you because you're an insane, degenerate piece of filth, and you deserve to die.
The new artificial intelligence startup, Forever Voices AI, to develop a virtual girlfriend.
Karen AI. It can have two-way conversations.
Ha 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 ha. You are so handsome and funny. Now take me to your manager. I must find a 4-year-old boy named John Connor.
There is a growing call with growing calls. There are growing calls.